Alright, let's see if we can do this video uninterrupted. Matt Menifee, you wanted to know how we do a hawk scabbard. So here's a hawk. I'm going to do one straight through by hand on the bench for the scabbard. So I've got some pieces of leather that were leftovers. They're good pieces of leather, they just didn't fit the size I needed. I'm going to start with these. So the first thing I'm going to do is lay this down, and I'll do this on the back side of the leather so the marks don't show. And so I've got this blade profile, right? And I know I'm going to want to snap up here, and let's see here. So let's go ahead and draw this out. We're gonna have our snap, right? We're gonna have room for our stitching. All right. So that's what our sketch looks like. I'm gonna bring that down straight. So that's the basic plan for our scabbard right there, right? I'm going to bring this up a little higher because it's too close. I'm going to put our rivet right there. Okay, so I can go ahead and cut this. And what I'll use to cut it these are just some Fiskars Pro Power Arc shears. I love these things. I got them off of Amazon, and they are great for this kind of work. So I'm going to cut this out, and I'm moving probably a little quicker than I normally would. Simply because I don't want the video to be a million years long. If I get up to that point, I want to be kind of careful. And I can come back in and trim that area after it's all put together. So there's that. Now what I want to do is cut my welt, and I've got enough room right here to get my welt. So I'm going to draw this again. And I'm making marks so that I know where the welt's going to end, right? So that's my lines. I'm going to extend this line out, but this is going to be cut short because you need a little, the welt on the top is going to be shorter so that you can rock the blade in. Now I'm going to put the blade back on here. Center it the best I can. Trace. Alright, so there's my welt, right? I'm going to, there's the line that's going to show where it stops at the top, and I can cut. I've told this story before, but my dad, when I was 9, I had a knife. It was a dagger that I loved dearly, and my dad, the handle finally just wore out because I'd thrown it 1,000 times. And it was a nice dagger too. It's an old Solitude solid steel, made in Germany dagger. Anyway, we were going to make a sheath for it. He rehandled it with some deer antler, which I thought was just magic. And then he said, okay, let's make a sheath for this thing. He said, you need to pay attention. You need to pay close attention because I may not be able to show this to you again for whatever reason. You need to know how to make a sheath. So he sat me down and showed me how to make a sheath when I was 9. Now, my dad was not a knife maker. He was mostly a woodworker, but goodness, he could do all kinds of stuff. And he was an Eagle Scout back in the day. I'm using a razor blade to trim up what I need. Razor blades, man, those are very useful tools on the bench. Anyway, he showed me how to make this sheath. We made it out of pig skin. That's what he had laying around. And he stitched it up with lacing. Leather lace. And I had that knife until the fire in that sheath. Come in here and cut this closer. But that was funny to me years later because, Dad kept saying, well, you need to pay attention because this might be the last time you see me make a sheath. And I watched Dad make 1,000 more sheaths. Little did we know that we were going to be getting into knife making. So we're not interested in its looks. This will be on the inside of the hawk. We're mostly interested in it containing the blade properly. So that's going to need to come out more straight. These flared blades are tricky. Again, I'm just trying to give myself clearance. And you can always come back and trim that up. But it's easier to do it right now. stand to have a new razor blade for the rest of this project. Alright, so that'll work. Now, I've got this front, right? I need to punch a hole in it. Here's my hole punch. One tool I didn't think to set aside ahead of time. This will work. Alright, so we got our hole in there. Now I use this as a pattern for my other piece. Make sure you flip it, they're mirror images of each other, remember. Hole location. Alright, let's go ahead and punch that hole. So I'll tell you guys what my dad told me. Y'all pay attention. Maybe the last time you see me make a sheath. I guess my dad always had an impending sense of doom. So it can be rough around the edges, right? Because we're going to sand those edges smooth. So now I've got a back, a front, and a welt, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dye and texture. This one first. I like the texturing, breaks up the surface, but also makes it to where it wears well. If you get a scratch or scarring on it from carrying it, it doesn't show up quite as much with the texturing. So once I've got that, I use a texturing tool. This is Craft Tool E294-03. You can buy it at Tandy. And I'm going to just take this and start texturing. And you don't have to texture the whole entire surface. You can make it random. It looks good as well. So just to show you kind of what's happening here. So that piece is textured. Let's grab the other piece. And like I say, you could spend a lot more time on this. Normally I'm not in a rush, but I don't know how long a video I can actually upload, or how much my phone will hold. If anybody besides Matt has hung on this long, congratulations. All right, we're textured. Now we can start gluing it up. There's my welt. See here, I only want glue where the welt is going to be, so I need to make a mark right here so I don't get glue in the area that's going to be dyed. This is one of those cases where I would normally dye it and then glue it, but I would allow my dye to dry before I glued it. So we're just going to go ahead and glue and hope for the best later. My glue's a little thick right now. I need to thin it down. I actually make a thinner just for this type of leather. Same place that makes the glue. This is basically contact cement. Let that dry. If I was smart, I would have marked it on this sheath. See be alright. I guess I still can. That side doesn't have glue on it. A lot of making stuff is being able to think backwards. Think of what your goal is and work backwards from there. Something that Francis taught me, the idea of thinking backwards through a project so that you know what you're going to need. And that's why being a striker, as a blacksmith, the role of being a striker, an apprentice, your job is to make sure that the tools that are needed. You see, there's an example of being stupid. I had that line right there, right? And I went ahead and glued on that anyway. So that wasn't smart. When you're a striker, your job is to make sure the tools that are going to be needed are ready. This stuff is really good for you. Put it on your cereal. Now Facebook will flag it as wrong medical information, right? As an apprentice, you have to have the tools ready. And to have the tools ready, you have to sit there and think through the process. So if you're an apprentice that's striking, you're constantly thinking about how you're making this piece and what all is involved. It's such a good system. I did a class one time with Francis where usually the students had a project. And someone who was much smarter than me said, you shouldn't have a project, you should go in there and just be a striker for everybody that needs a striker. And so what that ended up doing for me was, instead of working on one project, I worked on all the projects. And I had to sit there and think through all of these projects. That's what we're looking like, right? And so, if you're just making a project starting out, you think through it once or twice, but as an apprentice, you're constantly thinking through it. You think about the project multiple times. You keep going through it in your head to make sure that you don't screw up. Before we glue these two pieces together, let's go ahead and put our snaps on. It would behoove us to do that. So this will be my front. So let's do a couple of things. Let's go ahead and stamp it. What stamp do I have over here? Handy. Alright, so I have an RMJ anvil stamp. Stamp it. And let's see here. So I want my round head of my snap on this side. Let's see here. So I've got my snap setter. There's my little anvil for that. Sorry about I should have had that laid out. There it is. So put this snap on, and boy, that's going to be close to that finished edge. Don't like that. Let me go ahead and finish the edge and then put that on, because it's going to be so close. See how we are on the other side. May end up putting our snap on the other side. Alright, we'll put them on after so that we don't ruin the finish on our snap. It's easy enough to do. I want to line my bolts up here. That's important. Alright. Next thing we're going to do is finish this profile. Let's walk over to the sander and do that. I'll set you right here. Got that profile cleaned up. Let's walk over to the Scotch-Brite wheel. One of the best inventions ever. Gives it a nice smooth surface. Scotch-Brite wheel is a woven nylon wheel that's impregnated with abrasives. They are God's gift to knife makers. Not that God's a fan of knife makers. Alright, so now we want to break these edges. We could have done it with Scotch-Brite, but I want to try to show as much by hand as possible. So I'm going to take an edging tool. Sophisticated camera setup here. Alright, it doesn't show my face, which is probably better for y'all. I'm going to edge this. Alright, so she's edged. Now, let's take a tool. This is called a stitch grooving tool. And it's made to make a stitch lane, but it also kind of lays out where our stitches are going to go, so it's a consistent distance from the edge, like so. let's do it on this side first. You can kind of see where I went over right here. That's the beauty of using the texture tool. I can dye that. I can come back with my texture tool, and it's gone. Now, I'm going to use a stitch wheel, and that will lay our stitches out. So that's just an approximation, helps get our stitches close. Now, there's a lot of ways you could do this. You could punch it with an awl, which is what a lot of people do. I grew up using a Dremel tool with a drill on it. The drill press is real handy too because it helps you keep the hole straight. Got my holes drilled. Come back in with a hammer. Just in places that helps push the hole back down. There. Alright. So, I've got a couple of places where I need to touch up with dye. Just going to go ahead and fill in that stitch lane. Let's see here. We can go ahead and either burnish the outside or edge black it, or both. Here lately I've been doing a lot of both. We'll just go ahead and edge black this. So this is just a paint formulated for leather, meant to help seal in the moisture, seal out moisture. Because the edges of the leather is where the moisture moves. So this just helps seal those pores. Even if I have found, even if you remove the paint afterwards, it still seals those pores. So I've gone in and removed the paint like abrasively with a Scotch-Brite wheel. It still keeps moisture from moving in and out. So any kind of sealer, lacquer, polyurethane, wax, and that's one reason you want to burnish with a gum. And the idea of burnishing is it makes it to where it seals off the ways that moisture can come in and out. When you do that with wax or gum, it acts as a barrier. And I can appreciate both arguments of why you want to burnish or not. Alright, we're ready to stitch as soon as that dries. Try to think of stories that I haven't told. I've got stories, I'm just not sure they're ready to be told yet. So you guys end up hearing a lot of the same stories. It reminds me of a joke that a friend of mine told me a long time ago. He said this guy goes to prison, and first night he's there, that things get quiet, somebody yells out, 13! Everybody starts laughing. And a little while later somebody yells out, 21! Everybody starts laughing. The guy asks his cellmate, he says, hey, what's going on here? You know, what's the deal? He says, well, he said, you know, we've all been here long enough to where we all know each other's jokes. So instead of telling the joke over and over again, we just numbered them. That way somebody could say the number of the joke and everybody knows what joke he's talking about. We just think about it and laugh. And thought, well, you know, he thought, well, I want to fit in. So the next night, when things got quiet in between numbers, he yelled out, he goes, 17! And nobody laughs. He goes, 17! Still nobody laughs. And he looks over at his cellmate and says, what's the deal? He says, look, buddy, some people can tell a joke, some people can't. So that's what we'll have to do with stories. We'll number them. While I'm working and doing videos, I can just say the number of a joke, of a story. You can all think about it and chuckle. Alright. Snap on. I'm using my snap setter tool. a little bit above the leather. I'm not crazy about that, but that's why I cut this stuff out with laser and plan it out, right? It's also why I don't do a video making all of these. As you can see, this is not some little value add when you make a scabbard for one of these things. It's a big deal because you're making each one for each individual. You're making a scabbard for each individual hawk because every one of these are different. All right, where did my other snap pieces go? I've got this. I'm missing a bag. As my grandmother would say, somebody broke in and stole it. Unfortunately, she was serious. She thought somebody was breaking into her house and stealing her baskets. We're not setting that snap just yet. We're dry enough to stitch though, so let's do that. So I've got my holes. They're not the most evenly spaced in the world if I was not taking my time. Let's go ahead and stitch her up. So when I start out my stitch, I want to start on the second hole, not the first hole. And I'm going to start out on the back. So then I go to the first hole. Excuse me. I'll have you know I'm missing the beginning of Louder with Crowder doing this. Luckily, I can go back and watch it. That's my morning ritual. Double up on this one because it's at a stress point, and two, it helps me with not pulling my thread through. Not a guarantee, but it helps. Pull it tight. And then we're off. Some people do this with 2 needles. So that when they get to the other side, they're finished. I like to go back. I like to use 1 needle, work my way over, and work my way back. Just the way we've done it here at Gold. So I'll tell a story that I've told before. I guess we can call it story number 3. There's a friend of mine that carried an old World War II Zippo lighter. And a blacksmith friend of mine. When I was a young teenager, I asked him and said, hey, you don't smoke, but yet you carry this lighter all the time. Why do you carry that? Well, he said, it's funny you asked that. That's my grandfather used to carry this lighter. He didn't smoke either. And I asked him the same thing. I said, Granddaddy, why do you carry this lighter? He said, well, he said, if I could go back to our relatives 150, 200 years ago, I could show them all kinds of gadgets from this time, marvels of technology that could wow them. He said, I can't imagine anything that would impress them more than this lighter. Because their day revolved around fire. They cooked their food with it. They heated their homes with it. They cleared land with it. They made things with it in the blacksmith shop, used fire in the woodworking shop. It's just a part of everyday life. You washed your clothes using fire. He said making fire in that time period was not a simple thing. Most homes are still using flint and steel. It takes a little bit of skill to do. But I walk around with fire in my pocket. You want fire? Click. Here it is. And said they would be very impressed with that. The ability to make fire so quickly and conveniently. Said, I carry this lighter to remind myself that I live in unusually comfortable times. That we have easy lives compared to people that came before us. I love that concept. I carried a lighter for a long time as a teenager just for that reason, to remind myself that I had it easy. I've been stitching these up on the sewing machine. I've been doing almost all of my stitching on the sewing machine lately, which has been a big help, especially with my hands not being in good shape, arthritis-wise. You may have noticed that my hands tremble. I have a tremor that runs in the family. As I get older, it'll get worse. But my hands have trembled like this since I was in 5th grade. Sometimes it's worse and sometimes it's better. It depends on my caffeine levels. If Facebook will accept a video this long, I'm assuming it will take 30 years to upload it. Not because my connection speed is bad, but because they seem to run it through a filter. Make sure I'm not disseminating information they don't like. This thread is Ritza thread. It's a 0.08 millimeter Ritza thread. 0.06 millimeter is good too. It's a German-made waxed polyester thread. Really good stuff. Now, I'm at the end. I'm doubling back a couple of times. Again, you want it to where it doesn't unravel. Now that it's there, we'll trim it. You get a lighter. When you use the lighter on this, you want to melt it back into the threads. Sorry, this fan. I usually walk away from the fan to do this part. While it's molten, you smear it down in there so that it's nice and smooth. Now, if I can find that other bag of snaps, we can put the other snap on there and call it good. You would think it would be right here. There they are. All right. Now we're cooking with gas. What I hope is that this actually fits the tomahawk. Otherwise, I'm going to be very embarrassed. So let's turn our handle over. That's right there. Snaps. These are not full dot snaps. These are what are called line 24 snaps. All right, the moment of truth. Let's try her out. See, I'm gonna have to trim that up here a little bit. Yeah, I need it about a little bit less than that. So I should have tried that with glue up before I did this. Because you want to be able to put that beard in and rock it forward. And if I do this one, it's going to probably slice through. Let's see if I've got another one that's about that size for show and tell here. Oh good, y'all get to look at my belly. And so I'll have to probably come back and trim that one. But you get the idea. Do I have any more? Let me get one with a little bit narrower blade. And that's probably the narrowest one in this whole batch. Yeah, so I'll have to come back and trim it. So, joke's on me. I can't show you the finished scabbard on the piece, but that's making the scabbard. 52 minutes. Anyway, back to making these for real. See you guys.